Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's going to be comparing two luxury off-roaders, the Land Rover Defender to the Lexus GX550. Before we get in this video, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to the Land Rover here in Salt Lake City, Utah for giving me some time with this Defender. I'll include a link to their website in the description down below. Also include a link to my car buying guide. Let's get into it. Under the hood of the Defender, we have a turbo 3-liter inline-6 that goes through an 8-speed automatic transmission. Fuel economy 17 around town and then 20 on the highway, with power outputs being 395 horsepower and then 406 pound-feet of torque. Now, powering the Lexus is a twin-turbo 3.4-liter V6 that goes through a 10-speed. Now, this produces 349 horsepower and then 479 pound-feet of torque. Fuel economy is 15 around town and then 21 on the highway. Now, before we move forward with this comparison, I do want to mention, if you want to see more videos just like this, then I recommend you subscribe because I post content every single day. So when it comes to style, they're both boxy, but the Defender definitely boxier, I would say. I think a big part of helping it look a little bit boxier is, look around the headlights, for example, a literal square. I think you can see everything shaped here at the bottom. So it is more rounded off compared to like the older Defender, but still very boxy. Upright windshield, which the Lexus also has an upright windshield, but you notice how the front end comes off to like a point. That kind of makes it look a little bit less boxy, and then having the headlights be sharp in normal Lexus fashion also kind of changes that, but there's the front ends. So with the Defender, our tire wheel setup is 255 by 65 by 19. With the Lexus, it is 265 by 70 by 18. And you can see here on the Lexus wheels, the satin finish versus the Defender has that gloss finish. Both of them have all-terrain tires, by the way. And then look at the fender flares with both of them. The Lexus definitely has much larger fender flares there. I love this on the Defender. I think it's a pretty cool piece. And then notice they both have squared off mirror caps, which is pretty cool. And then, look at the shape here on the side. Very similar in the rear with both of them. So tight parking lot, not a full side view, but you guys can see kind of like the side profile of the Defender. And then here's the side profile of the Lexus GX. Now the GX has a traditional cargo area, and what I mean by that is with the hatch opening, and I'll show that in just a moment. Anyways, you can see the cup holders back here. You cannot get a third row in the GX Overtrail, but you can get it in other GX packages. But yeah, overall pretty good storage space. And then again, this is where it's traditional, it's just a power hatch like most modern SUVs, crossovers. The Defender has this really cool swing gate, so it's a little bit different. The storage space, so vertical, really solid. It looks like there's not quite as much in the horizontal direction, but it's still very spacious back here. The Defender does come with air suspension, so you can raise and lower the rear to make accessing this cargo area a little bit easier. And then the Alpine windows in the back are really cool to see. And then the swing gate's really easy to open and close. It's got a nice hydraulic strut, and then you got the spare tire in the back. So I think the Defender has more of like a classic off-road look, whereas the Lexus, it's still boxy in the back end, but yeah, I don't know, a little bit different. Now popping to the passenger cabin of the Lexus, we do have a sunshade here for the rear passengers, and nice trim overall. I'm not a huge fan of these seats in terms of the coloration, but it is what it is. Getting in's not too bad. You do have to step up a little bit. Legroom's pretty decent, got a little storage pocket here. See the vents here in the back, heated seats, charging ports as well. And then it'll be interesting to compare headroom. It does come down a bit here in the Lexus because of the sunroof. And now taking a look at the Defender door panel, definitely a lot cooler with the exposed rivets. Material use, I'd say it's pretty similar with both of them in terms of how nice it feels. And then here are the seats, a much nicer looking coloration. Getting in's a little bit easier with the Defender because of that air suspension. And it feels a little bit more spacious back here. Got a little storage pocket, got our own climate controls. I think a big part of that is the roofline feels a little bit higher inside, even though this has a panoramic sunroof. Now taking a look at the front door panel with the Lexus, again, nice trim throughout, get all of our window controls. There are mirror adjustments and everything. The mirrors do power fold in, they also have blind spot monitoring. We have 1,545 pounds of payload with this, pretty impressive. And then here's the front seat. Again, not the prettiest with the coloration in my opinion, but it does have power adjustments, same thing with the steering wheel. Getting in's pretty easy. Not too crazy with the ride height on this. Stop start button's interesting. So we've got this nice digital gauge cluster. Pretty fancy pants if you ask me. Look at that. It takes a second to load up though. But yeah, nice setup there. And then with the steering wheel, you can see here all of our physical controls here, including adaptive cruise control. We've got paddle shifters there on the back for the 10-speed that this comes with. 360 camera system. Fills in underneath the vehicle, which I wonder who they got that from. Anyways, dual zone climate with heated and ventilated seats. It's all on the screen. We do have some physical controls for like some of the off-road stuff. So this does have multi-terrain select, crawl control, and it also comes with a selectable center and rear locking differential, as well as a 2-speed transfer case. So it has all the off-road stuff, and we'll talk about this more with driving, but this has a solid axle versus the Defender's independent suspension all around. Got some more storage here with some phone charging pad action. Cool box, also can double as a center console. Nice trim here on the top. Regular rear view mirror, surprisingly, this is a loaded up one. It's almost 85 grand. And normal headliner, and then we got normal sunroof as well. And then this one has the roof rack, you guys can probably see. Now taking a look at the front door panel with the Defender. Again, got this nice soft touch trim throughout. You can see all the window controls, mirror adjustments, memory seat function, blind spot monitoring with said mirrors. See what the payload, I think the payload sticker's down here on this. 1157, so still solid, not as much as the Lexus though. And then here are the front seats, very luxury, that is for sure. All of our adjustments there on the side. Let's see here with the trim on the dash, and then let's quickly pop in. I like the setup there. So digital gauge cluster here, as you can see, just like the Lexus. Heads-up display, I forgot to mention the Lexus, so you can also get a heads-up display. Bunch of practical controls, including cruise control on the steering wheel. I mean, most manufacturers kind of do it that way. This is stylized a little bit more compared to the Lexus. And that's the thing you'll notice about this interior. Now, funny enough, this one actually has the smaller screen. You can get a bigger one, but still 360 camera system fills in underneath the vehicle. The bigger screen kind of pops up above this section on the dash if you go for that unit. But yeah, I mean, everything easy enough to use. Got all of our controls here in the center for the climate, the air suspension, your transfer case, and then you guys can see with the hill descent control. With the lockers in this, it's not selectable, and let's actually see what this has. So if we go to, yeah, so this one just has a center. There is a package where you can add a rear locking differential too, but again, it's all automatic, it's not selectable. And then tons of storage here in the center area. You can get a cool box here. I love this center console because of how it pops back like that. That's a super nice feature to have in a car. Nice trim here on the top. And then you can see with the kind of like stylized element there across the dash. Camera rear view mirror. And then we do have a panoramic sunroof. And quick look at the window sticker. Because the Lexus was like 85 almost. This is just over 80. So this is almost $5,000 less than the Lexus. So with that being said, let's take them out and see which one performs the best. Lexus first. So let's talk about a couple things. This has a system called EKDSS, and basically the technical stuff, not important. What's important is what it does in the real world. And I own a new Land Cruiser, and so I can tell you between this and the Land Cruiser, the EKDSS smooths things out on the road, like when you go over bumps, and then it makes it handle a little bit better. So we'll see how that compares to the Defender's air suspension, because air suspension is supposed to actually do a very similar thing. Make a car handle a little bit sharper and smooth things out. Now, the torque on this car is quite impressive. Again, 479 pound-feet. And if you don't know, with the GX, smaller turbo compared to the Tundra, for example. So that's where the horsepower deficit comes from. But they still kept the torque figure strong. And I'll say the seats are pretty darn comfortable. And overall, I mean, I do like this interior. Like, it's, you can tell that they've built this out to where, like, this stuff that is gonna get a lot of sun, love from the sun, they've used materials that aren't going to show wear. Same thing here at the top. But I will say overall, the interior is kind of boring in the Lexus. It's not very stylized at all. It's like giant screen, and then there's not a lot happening. Suspension's pretty darn comfortable. Again, this is body on frame, solid rear axle, independent front suspension. This is kind of like your typical modern off-roader in terms of its setup. And yet, it handles pretty well. It's pretty smooth, and it's got, yeah, pretty nice turning and everything. Like, they've done a good job with this to make it feel less truck-like. And I think that makes sense for this vehicle, being the Lexus, which is kind of like the, right? So Lexus is always the luxury version. So that, yeah, that's just kind of how things sit there. We are going to get our acceleration, and then we'll pop over into the Defender. Yeah, it's got a decent, like, punch. It's got a pretty good punch. Doesn't quite have a top end because the horsepower is relatively low for how heavy this vehicle is. But again, on the low end, and most people that drive SUVs kind of just drive on the low end, it's great. So for basically a truck, this drives pretty darn well. So let's go pop into the Defender and see how that compares. Defender. So we've got independent front and rear suspension unibody. So this is not traditional at all when it comes to, even though it has a traditional swing gate, not a traditional off-roader. This is a new type. And on-road, it provides a lot of benefits. With the air suspension, getting in and out's a little bit easier with that access height. Now, when you go over bigger compression, the Lexus with body on frame is going to handle that a little bit better. And that's what I've just always noticed. Because unibody is more rigid, it doesn't handle compression as well as body on frame. Because with body on frame, right, let's say you've got a big compression, right? Suspension, you know, gets a pretty harsh hit. Well, it goes into the suspension, then into the frame, and then transfers into the the cab on top of the frame. Whereas with this unibody, it just goes straight from the suspension into the unibody. So you hear kind of more happening with the chassis, and you feel more as well over those big bumps. The benefit though is on road on the smaller stuff, it doesn't have nearly as big of an impact. And so it's kind of like a pick and choose. Like for me personally, I'm on, you know, really rugged roads on a regular basis, and so it's nice to have something that's a little bit more isolated over the big bumps. Again, not as comfortable. Like this here, Defender's way more comfortable. And the nice thing with the independent suspension, right, is every single bump, it just, so the body stays level, and the air suspension also helps out with that too. That's another part of it. Now, when it comes to handling, the EKDSS in that Lexus is really good. So I would say that, man, the Lexus almost handles better. Surprisingly. Could be a weight thing too. They both handle well, but yeah, the EKDSS does definitely do some magic. That is for sure. And we'll see how the acceleration is here. So yeah, it doesn't feel quite as torquey, but it's got more top end. So you kind of gotta pick and choose on that front. So to sum things up with this comparison, you have to be honest with yourself. How much off-roading are you actually gonna do? If you're not gonna do very much off-road, I mean, both of them are luxury cars, right? At the end of the day, luxury off-roaders. But if you're not gonna do that much off-roading, the Defender has more space. It's a little bit more comfortable on road. The air suspension makes accessing it easier. And I actually prefer this engine. This engine's smoother than the V6. Again, inline six, it's really hard to be an inline six when it comes to just smooth acceleration. And I think the Defender looks better. I like the looks of the Lexus, but you know, the Lexus has a sibling Toyota Land Cruiser, and the Land Cruiser looks so much better with that same body. Whereas, yeah, the Defender, I actually think it looks better than both of them, personally. And I'm saying this as someone who owns a Land Cruiser. I just think they did a really good job with this style. It is a little bit bubbly, but I think it looks good overall. So let me know which one you like the best, but I think that they're both I know that they're both very capable off-road because I've taken both of them off-road. But I think that the Defender provides an extra layer of luxury that, if we're realistic with ourselves, that's what most people are going to care about that are buying this type of vehicle, right? They're getting this for the rugged looks, not for the rugged use necessarily.